back, friends. You're just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, and welcome to the Johnny Brew Show and Red Wave 22. We have got everything that you need to know as we lead up to primary season in June, and then, of course, the big midterm elections in November of 2022. And what I need from you guys is I need you to subscribe. I need you to tell a friend. We are growing, but we need to reach all of the conservative voters in Southern Nevada and in Nevada as a whole. So please, subscribe, hit the bell, and please just tell a friend. Tell them what we're doing over here. You know, I was just going to tell you guys about some of the stuff we've been doing. And we've had everybody from Valeria Gurr, Alita Benson, Danielle Ford. We've got, Anna Binder, Jessie Law. We had Carolina Serrano, Mark Robertson, Dr. Fred Simon, Stavros Anthony, Joshua Lamack, Segal Chata, Erin Phillips, Sherelle Mendenhall, Alan Bigelow, Guy Nora, John Petrick, Charlie De La Paz. Earlier this week, we had Joey Gilbert. Later, tomorrow, we're going to have Carrie Cox. We have an amazing bunch of people coming on, including Annie Black, Michelle Fiore. You need to find out when all these episodes are airing. Go to Common Sense Nevada, look up the Johnny Brew Show on Facebook, or subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And one last thing, we are brought to you by Infinity, the Math Institute. Play a tape. That's Infinity, the Math Institute. Go to themathinstitute.com or call 702-768-1777. We have an awesome guest today running for the House of Representatives. And it's a guest that we've been really looking forward to. We saw him once up in Winnemucca, and now we're excited to have him right here in studio. First, and I gotta admit, I was gonna save this for when he was on camera, but this is one of my favorite campaign ads, because you know I don't really love these campaign ads. Play tape.
Where opportunity and self-determination thrive for those hardworking individuals that call this state their home. However, our trust has been betrayed by our elected representatives for too long. That is why it's time for a change in Nevada.
Like so many others, I'm sick and tired of looking at Washington, D.C. and asking, what is Congress doing? The real answer is that career politicians are serving their own interests and ignoring you and me. Enough is enough. I'm Sam Peters, a United States Air Force veteran, a small business owner, a loving father, and a devoted husband. And I'm running to serve you in the United States House of Representatives. I retired from the United States Air Force after more than 20 years of service, including deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait. During my service, I was awarded the Bronze Star for action in Afghanistan, defending our freedoms. After retiring, I opened my own small business right here in Las Vegas, where I'm able to leverage my experience to help others succeed. All of these experiences reinforced my core set of beliefs: that America is the greatest country on the face of the earth, that government should always be for the people and by the people, and that our pursuit of the American dream is only truly possible by limiting government's reach into our lives. In my America, liberty still matters. I'm running for Congress because our shared values are not being represented by Steve Horsford. We need someone that's not only willing to fight for what is right, but also what is necessary to ensure we don't lose the truths our founding fathers believed to be self-evident. Over the course of the coming months, I plan on meeting you personally to hear your stories, listen to your concerns, and share my vision for our collective future. I'm Sam Peters, a conservative, a Republican, and a proud Nevadan. I'm running for Congress to protect your family as well as mine. Join me.
So, without further ado, running in for Congress in Nevada, District 4, Mr. Sam Peters, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Johnny. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
You know, and even our producer just said, you know, they're impressed with your campaign video. It doesn't look like the same one everybody's got. There's no train tracks. There's no guns. There's no walking through the desert. There's a little desert in there, but you're walking through a typical Las Vegas ball field, it looked like, and at your own small business. And it isn't your cookie cutter one. So congratulations, I think.
Thanks. We had fun making that, and we had, I wrote most of the script, and you had some edits and those kind of things.
Right.
But the reality is, it's all where our campaign started, where it's going, and where we believe our country needs to be. Because, quite frankly, liberty still matters.
And the message, of course, is more important than the production. But
yeah, for sure.
On the production note, I really liked the way you were talking, and you were walking, and then in your office, and everything was dubbed over and real smooth.
They did a great job on it.
Yeah, whoever made it did a really, really good job.
For sure.
Now, you're going to be running against, now, you probably weren't prepared for this, but Annie Black has recently declared that she's going to be running. Yeah. Jessie Vargas, who's definitely somewhat of a celebrity as a boxer. Tony Lane has since bowed out of the race. We had Tony Lane, I didn't even mention that, on last season. Really good guy. And then we got this Chance Bonaventure, who I believe was like an intern for Michelle Fiore.
I think he's your chief of staff or something like that.
So moved up the ranks, really. Right. And so how do you feel about the primary coming up? Because it's going to be a big one.
Yeah, whether, prepared for it or not, we knew it was coming. I ran in 2020. There was 8 people in the primary. Right. We started this campaign back in January of 2021, right after the New Year. The election was for the most part over. It's been over a year. So coming into this, we had no illusions that we were going to walk on, and it was going to be
uncontested.
Right, there was no illusions on that. But we did start early for the very purpose of raising as much money as possible, getting as much name recognition out to keep that same energy that we had in the 2020 election. Right, to keep that going. So,
and in that 2020 election, you actually were the runner-up to Jim Marchant in the primary, and you had only lost by 6 points, 34 to 28. You were clearly, the runner-up. It was you and Jim.
Yeah.
And he eventually lost to Horsford, 51 to 46 by 5 points.
Correct.
I obviously believe that that's a turnable 5 point, 5 points. And then you didn't have any official campaign contributions, but there was a off the record or something. You had reported that you raised about $500,000 last year.
So in 2021, officially, it's on the FEC website.
Maybe I didn't understand the article I was reading.
No, we have raised over $500,000 in 2021, and we've been raising money in January, February, up through today as well.
And then me personally, in my amateur view, I'm guessing it's going to be between you and Annie Black.
She's a contender. She's a conservative. She's currently a sitting assemblywoman.
Right. She made a name for herself.
She made a little bit of a name, but you know what? We're going forward with that message that you saw in the video. We're pushing forward. We've raised our goal in this election for the primary was to raise $500,000. We're already there, and we have some months to go yet. So we're well positioned. Again, just to answer that question, were we prepared for this? We had no illusions that things like this would happen, and I think we're positioned incredibly well. Our campaign is moving forward at a really good rate. We're having lots of events. Lots of people are showing up. A lot of people are still donating. Things are looking really good.
Right, and we're going to talk more about your campaign and your endorsements and your issues and stuff like that. But I wanted to go back a little bit. First of all, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Northern Maine, actually.
Northern Maine?
I did, yeah.
So you're Canadian?
not quite that northern. No, a little bit, about an hour, a little over an hour north.
Anything north of Yonkers for a New Yorker is Canada. So
I don't speak French Canadian. So,
all right.
Yeah.
And what was it like growing up in Maine?
It was great, man. We hunting and fishing. Growing up as a kid I spent a lot of time in the woods. We had it was me and my older brother and mom, and it was just, it was a small town America.
Right.
My town was maybe 4,000 people. My graduating class in high school was 72 people.
Wow.
So everybody knew
So
everybody.
everybody knew everybody.
Yep, and it was good.
And what were you into in high school? Sports or drama or band?
I wish I was in band. I'd love to be able to play an instrument. I know you do.
Yeah.
I played golf a couple of years in high school. When I was in junior high, I was great at soccer. I loved playing soccer. I was a really small kid.
Right.
So going into high school, it wasn't
You weren't big enough to play soccer.
I wasn't big enough. So I jumped into golf my sophomore, junior year. Was on the starting squad my senior year. It was good.
If hindsight was 2020, boy, everybody should have joined the golf team. I mean, they let you out of school early. Every day you go to the golf course and you're hitting golf balls.
Yeah.
And
I actually would go to the golf course before school some days, and me and a friend of mine would get in 9 holes before school.
Really?
Yeah, we'd get up at 5 in the morning and get it done.
I used to go to my elementary school and practice free throws every morning before I went to school in middle school and high school.
I played a little basketball. I played all the sports. I'm a huge baseball fan, as noted by my jersey this morning.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I also saw you had like a Henderson Silver Knights, I think it was, in some of the pictures I saw recently. Or was it the Vegas Golden Knights?
Vegas Golden Knights, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I just noticed you're a big sports fan. That's why I figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
And then, did you go straight to college, or did you join the military and then go to college?
Yeah, so I joined the military a week and a half, 2 weeks after my 18th birthday.
Shut up.
So yeah, I graduated in May.
And this is the early 90s?
This is 1992.
Nice.
So November of 92, I joined the military, enlisted as a E1. As a law enforcement officer, guaranteed job.
Oh, because I noticed that you're big into law enforcement. So you
yeah.
did military police in the military.
In the Air
so you
Force,
kind
I
of
did, yeah.
have a feel for both military and law enforcement.
I did, and I was fortunate. I was one of the early slots to get become a canine handler as one of my first
Really?
my first job.
And did you always have a love of dogs?
I did.
think we got some pictures of you. And to be honest, a lot of times
There you
we
go.
talk about your history while we just scroll through the pictures. But we got 3 beautiful pictures. I wanted you to tell us a little bit about each picture rather than just scrolling through them.
So that dog's name is Denny. He went to this picture was taken just before we went to Saudi Arabia in 2000.
So this is before 9/11.
Before 9/11,
but
yep.
after Operation Desert Storm.
That's right. So we deployed out of actually Anchorage, Alaska, Elmendorf Air Force Base. So I took him. He was an explosive detector dog, and our job was to search for explosives coming and going onto the base, whether it be on the airfield, through the entry point gates, and just keep the force safe and do the things that we had to do to.
Do such an important job and still be hanging out with the dog. I mean, it must not almost feel like work.
No, it's fun. It is fun. Obviously you got him on a leash and you got to take care of him. You got a big responsibility there. But it was.
And you got to make sure there's no bombs on the base.
And you got to make sure there's no bombs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, he was a phenomenal canine. This is actually in South Korea. That is a munitions storage area that we patrolled. That dog's name is Sammy. She was a 2-year-old German Shepherd. Absolutely the most beautiful dog I've ever had. And she was a patrol dog. She didn't sniff for bombs or drugs or anything like that. She was strictly attack. Denny was attack as well, but he also had the bomb side.
Right.
But Sammy was strictly
And how
attack.
far were you from the North Korean border?
I was at Osan, so we were 2-hour drive.
You are 2 hours. Yeah. So you weren't on the border.
No,
but that's still so wild.
No. Yeah, it was. Osan is the biggest Air Force base
100 miles
there,
away.
roughly. Yeah.
And then what are we looking at right here? You're on.
So one of the jobs I had in the military, I was a first lieutenant. I think that was in the 2006 timeframe. I was a operations officer at one of the basic training squadrons at Lackland Air Force Base. All of the basic training for enlisted folks in the United States Air Force is at Lackland Air Force Base. So there were 6 squadrons. I was an operations officer, so second in charge at one of the squadrons. So behind me there, you'll see the drill instructor holding the guide on, and then behind him you see the troops that were gathered. That's actually the band, and we were doing a parade for the graduating class. So behind me, I'm actually leading my squadron of graduating airmen who had just gone through basic training, and I'm saluting the wing commander, the base commander,
Who they're going to be released out of basic training
Correct. So that was one of the jobs I did. Every Friday there was a graduation from the graduating class. They staggered it such that every Friday there was about 3,000 folks graduating.
Wow,
so,
that's
yeah,
great.
That was a really fun job.
Wow, that's awesome. And then you saw action everywhere from Panama. You were in Korea, Afghanistan, Syria, I believe, Saudi Arabia.
Not Syria, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Afghanistan. I was in Panama. I spent 3 years in Panama.
And did you ever see any heavy action or,
I wasn't a frontline guy. I wasn't I wasn't the guys, the Navy SEALs out there doing those things. Now the folks when I was working in Afghanistan, I was working with those folks, and there was some heavy targeting going on.
Right. I mean, because we're all so astute to it, seeing more so with the evolution of cell phones and everything else, what's going on in Ukraine. Yeah. It makes people a little bit more sensitive to what maybe our troops who were going through this exact thing. Yeah. Just they didn't have cell phones and we didn't get to see it live on TV.
So I was certainly in places where bombs were exploding and missiles were coming in and we were firing back.
And was this mostly in Iraq?
Iraq was probably the closest. Afghanistan, it was occurring. We had stuff raining down on us from time to time.
And did you have a canine with you? Did you have a canine with you the entire 20 years?
No, I didn't. So I was a canine law enforcement guy for the first 10, and then I commissioned. I earned my education, and I commissioned around the 10-year mark. Became an officer. I actually left the law enforcement career field. Yeah, and I did leadership. And like I said, when I was at the basic training, I was an officer.
Administration, leadership.
I was doing HR leadership. I was doing. I went to headquarters, and I was doing manpower and organization. So I built organizations for the military.
Right, because while you were in school, you went to college and you studied administration. You studied finance. You weren't studying canines. You were studying
my bachelor's degree.
Business.
My bachelor's degree is criminal justice. My master's is administration, focused on law, and then I have a graduate certificate, postgraduate organizational finance.
And this was kind of your evolution from law enforcement to finance and business and leadership.
Yep, exactly.
And is that what kind of did I'm sure you weren't a kid growing up saying, "Oh, I wish I could sell insurance." Like that. The kids don't say that's what I want to be.
Generally not.
But how did this evolution from law enforcement to finance and stuff lead you to open up business in insurance?
So when I came back from Afghanistan, it was my fourth tour to the Middle East, and I was coming up on the 20-year mark of my career. So the opportunity to retire was there, and it was a decision to be made. Was I going to retire? Was I going to stay longer and go on to the higher ranks in the military? And the reality of it was I was selected to be a major around that time frame of getting out. My dad worked for a big insurance company for about 17 years, leading insurance agents. So
you had a little bit of background.
So we had some background, and I was watching how successful he was, and I just asked him one day, "Hey, what's this business all about?" And we started getting into it. So
and then you retired, officer.
So I retired. I made the decision to retire as a major, and I went to corporate America. I worked for a big insurance company, and I actually went to Alaska right out of the military. And I was the field manager for 31 storefronts. And I did that for a couple of years.
And was this for Allstate?
It was actually, yes.
My mom used to work for Allstate.
There you go. There you go. So I worked. I was the field sales leader, they called me. I was basically a business consultant for 31 storefronts in Alaska. So all of the Allstate agents there, I was responsible to make sure that they knew what was going on with the company, making sure that they had what they needed to be successful in their business.
Put out some fires,
and do those things. So and create and keep the relationship between corporate and the contract agents. And then I decided that that looks like fun if you can do it on your own. So I'm going to go do it myself. Where should I do it? And my wife and I, we had just had our son in Alaska. Connor, and we were looking around different places to go, and we had been coming to Nevada, Las Vegas, for about a decade or so, a couple times a year for family reunions.
Right.
You know, I've got a brother in Henderson, and my dad's in Hawaii. He was coming back and
This
forth
is
here.
the seventh island, I believe.
Yeah,
of Hawaii or
Ninth
something
Island.
like
Yeah,
Ninth Island.
yeah, Ninth Island. So we would come here all the time, and you're like, you know what? Let's take a look at it. I came down from Alaska, looked around at a couple of different locations, and said, you know what? This is the right thing
And
to do.
this is 2012-ish?
15.
2015.
Yeah. So I retired in 13, went to Alaska for 2 years, and then July 1st of 15, we landed here, and we
Ever since.
Happily
Ever after.
Happily ever after.
So now you have 2 offices?
So 4 days ago, I had 2 offices with 3 different agencies. I accumulated. I bought the first one, then I started a second one 2 years later, and then I bought a third agency, and we co-located it. So I had the 3 agencies, and then on March 1st of this year, we were approved to merge. So we've cut some overhead, cut locations, and we're down to 1 location,
But still-
streamlining the business.
Right.
But the business is
So the business is almost as big, but you got about
it's
a third
bigger.
or a half of the overhead.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a smart. You had to go to college for 8 years to figure that. I could have told you that right here on the Johnny Bruce
yeah,
Show.
the math came to the math guy. That's right.
And then, so tell me about the evolution of your, desire to serve in our government.
Yeah.
Because I know that you ran, like we said, in 2020.
Yeah.
And did you start your political PACs and did you start your law enforcement, community service type things before you ran, or has that been since you ran?
Yeah, so 2015 when I opened the office, you start a new business, you're all in. This is what your focus is, right? As time went on and we started getting comfortable in the business and things were just kind of clicking along, and we've got the right staff in place, and that's working. You can start to expand your horizons a little bit and look at other opportunities.
Have a little bit of free time.
Have some free time, right? So, and around that time, 2016, the elections and Donald Trump, and,
right.
And then you look into 2018, 2019, what was happening with Congress and how the president was being treated, how the country was being just obliterated constitutionally, and the funding and the expending and all of these things that were happening, and then the southern border, and it just goes on, right? And as that's happening, I'm thinking, okay, my wife and I had these conversations often. We'd hear something on the radio about the amount of spending that's happening. Okay, somebody with business experience is going to step up and do something about this.
Nobody ever does.
And nobody does. And we're sitting there looking in the mirror, having this conversation, and somebody with military experience is going to step up because of all this nonsense that's happening in Syria, in Israel, Iran, and all this stuff.
What do we get?
And what do we get?
You get Millie and Austin.
Yeah, right, exactly. So all of these things are happening leading up to this mindset of, okay, somebody with some sense is going to do something. Somebody that knows foreign affairs, somebody that's served in the military, somebody with business experience, and then finally, it hits you like you're the guy. That's you.
Maybe that's you.
We're talking about you right now. So, finally, we decided, this is the right thing to do. We have the opportunity. We have the ability. Let's see what this looks like.
And
so we jumped in.
18-19.
This was 18-19 time frame, late 18, and then early 19.
And then you declared to run for Congress.
February, March.
Why didn't you try to get your feet wet on a more local position?
All of those things that I just said, and all the things we've talked about so far. When you read the Constitution, Congress, House of Representatives is responsible for all things finance,
purse strings,
and law.
Right.
And it's based in law. And that's my background.
Right.
That's where I come from. That's where I grew up.
And the things that were bothering you are taken care of there, not necessarily at the Nevada State House.
Right. And I'm not saying that, that's not an important job.
Right.
Absolutely
this
important.
Is your passion,
we need it. This is where I feel my experience, my ability lives, and we're going for it.
And what did you learn when you first ran? I mean, that was the first time running for anything, right?
It was, yep.
I mean, what were some of the things that took you by surprise and motivated you, demotivated you?
Well, the things that motivated me were just the reception we were having around the district. The district's huge, right? Yeah. So in 2020, before redistricting, it went all the way through White Pine County, 3.5 hours, 4 hours north to the east, and then 5 hours north to the west.
Right,
5 hours driving, right?
Land, right? It's
huge. So we're going exploring these places and talking to people and giving this message. The motivation was that people are telling us exactly what we feel, and we're connecting. So yeah, it was that motivated us quite a bit. Obviously, we knew going in, and we prayed a lot about this, about the amount of strain it would have on the family and the time away it would take from the kids and all of this. We knew going in what it was going to look like. So nothing really demotivated us on that. Obviously, it was painful to spend so much time and then lose the election.
Right.
But the reality of it is, it was worth it, and we knew going in it was the right thing to do.
Well, I mean, although you did lose the election to Jim Marchand in the primary, what blossomed? What was born out of that experience?
So that was June 9th of 2020. It took a week for us to really figure out the numbers because it was a close election. You mentioned the numbers. It was a 2,500 or so vote difference between Jim and I. And again, there was 8 people in that primary, 40,000 votes, and I lost by 2,500. It was close. But if you focus,
and if I'm not mistaken, Jim Marchand was a previous Secretary of State.
He was a state assemblyman previous.
He was
a
state assemblyman, so he had already had the name recognition that you lacked.
That was, I think, his 3rd campaign in that district.
Right.
Around that district. So,
am I mistaken? Is he running for Secretary of State now?
Is.
That's what it is.
He's running for Secretary of State now. So around that time, June, July of 2020, if you recall what's happening with the COVID shutdowns, cities across the country are burning down. And quite frankly, the elected officials that are in place to support law and order turn their back on police officers across the nation. And that was not something that sat well with me. We were no longer running for Congress, so we had some time and some energy. So we refocused that energy into the Law Enforcement Loyalty PAC that you referenced.
Right.
To focus, and the focus of that is very, very specific. It is to elect or help elect officials that have access or jurisdiction over police departments.
Right, whether you're talking about a DA or an attorney general
DA,
or a sheriff,
city council, right? So if
mayor,
state legislators, so these people who have influence over those police departments, school board.
Right.
School board trustees.
Right, with the CCSD police.
Exactly. So we focused on getting those folks elected or helping those folks get elected, those that will support their officers. And not only that, but to highlight those who won't.
And then
get them out of office.
Has it been a success? This is 2 years going now?
Yeah, we're going on 2 years. So in that was June, July of 2020, the election, November of 2020. We raised about $50,000 in a very short period of time, and we dumped every bit of that money that we could into candidates for the 2020 election. We had 17 folks that we got behind, either through social media advertising, direct funding, or just endorsements.
And unfortunately, that 2020 was a blue wave.
It was.
I think it's not close to the tidal wave. Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, we supported. I think 17 candidates. 7 of them got elected.
Oh, and 7 of them got elected. Very good. Anybody we know?
Katie Williams.
On the school board. Very good. She was on the show.
Yep. There's a couple. Wes Boger up in Mesquite on City Council.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So. Beautiful. And then I also saw that we're just about to make an announcement at the end of the show that we're going to be part of a COVID forum hosted by a whole bunch of really great people that we're going to talk about in a second. And I'm going to MC of the event while I'm going to be the media presence is going to be Wayne Allen Root, who apparently you've got some experience with.
I do.
How do you know Wayne? Did you co-host or substitute for him? I think I read that somewhere. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Wayne was a big supporter in my last campaign, and he's endorsed me again this campaign. Good friend of mine, him and his wife Cindy. So after the election in 2020, in June, they asked me to co-host not co-host, but guest host one of his radio shows on Fridays.
And did you ever have experience doing this?
Never did. The only experience I'd had on radio was doing interviews kind of like this. So I said, you know what, let's give it a shot. We started with Fridays, and then he had a need to do another day. So I ended up doing, for about 5 months, I did Tuesdays and Fridays for about 2 hours each show.
Wow. And that's a big show. I mean,
it was
wide
fun.
reach. It's nationwide syndication.
Well, that one I didn't do the syndication. I did the morning show which was just local.
Here,
just local. Yeah, it was.
But nonetheless,
it was great. It was a lot of fun. And one of the things I did in that, and because one of the things even in this campaign now that I'm very passionate about is helping other people get elected as well. Because this isn't about me, right? This is about the United States. This is about Nevada. This is about our communities,
right?
So helping other people, good people, get elected is a passion of mine as well. So when I was hosting with Wayne or for Wayne. He gave me permission to bring on candidates that were still in the election, and do an interview and give them some exposure. So for the first 3 or 4 months
you're the original Johnny Brew.
There you go. So that's what I did, and it's kind of like what you're doing now, exactly. So I would have him on the show. We'd do a 15-20 minute interview, give him some exposure, and off we went.
And is there anybody in particular you like this election cycle?
for which
For
office?
anything.
I like Sam Peters for Congress.
What district is he running?
District 4. He's running in District 4.
Is there anybody else that you mentioned? Or I mean, a lot of candidates come on here. They don't want to, say that. Oh, I like, I like Adam Laxalt. Because then, what about Sherelle Mendenhall? What about Sam Brown?
Sure.
Are you gonna?
I've had a lot of experience with Stan Hite.
Right.
I've been in a lot
We're
of events.
a big fan of Stan.
I've been in some meetings with Stan. He's been at some places where we've been. Great Christian, great experience as a law enforcement guy, a family guy. He's been on Las Vegas Metro for 30 years. I really like him, and I hope he does well.
Us one.
Yeah, I do.
I do. A little chum in the water. I appreciate it.
And I've got some other favorites too.
Go ahead, give me another.
You're gonna put me on the spot. Segal Chata.
I love
Segal, yeah.
But yeah,
she's good.
And Segal was on the show. She's great. She's a firecracker.
She is absolutely a firecracker, yeah.
And all right, so let's move on to some of the reasons why you wanted to run. And this is actually from, if I'm not mistaken, like 4 or 5 months ago. This is your first appearance on the Johnny Brew Show, explaining why you're so interested in running. Play tape.
In the primaries, you have to be a Republican to vote in the Republican primary. If you don't want to change from an independent or Green Party or whatever party you are, and you want to vote for me, then you have to wait for the general election. If you want to vote for me, you have to change to a Republican. You can change up to the day of. In fact, that was a law that was passed last cycle. You can do that. And the reason I tell you to do that is because the money that is being spent at the federal level is going to affect your pocketbook. The inflation that we're seeing now is not going away. We have been at interest rates at the lowest levels for nearly a decade now. There's nowhere for those interest rates to go but up. And here's the reality. If the interest rates go up 1 point over the next decade, that $29 trillion deficit turns into $130 trillion in 1 point. Over a 10 or 20 year period of a 1% rate increase. That's huge. And the fact that 1.1 trillion of our debt is owned by China, we have problems and we need to fix them. And the only place we can fix them is constitutionally in the House of Representatives.
Excuse me, pardon me. I was watching this clip and I realized, I think it was 2 days ago, we just raised the rate by a quarter point, with plans to raise it a quarter point at least a couple more times, if not a full point over the course of 2022. Yeah. How does that kind of news make you feel?
So that video was 6 months ago, or 4 or 5 months ago in Winnemucca, like you said. Right. And I said in there the deficit was $29 trillion. I looked this morning, it's $30.3 trillion. So it's gone up, half a trillion, $750 billion in less than a year, and we've got two more, like you said, we have two more interest rates going up. So it's exactly what I said. This deficit, this national debt, it's not sustainable. If we don't fix it now, if we don't start focusing on this, we've got problems. And they're going to vote next week on an omnibus bill, which is another $1.5 trillion, with a lot of pork belly in there that we need to talk about.
I'm trying to do the math right now. That's going to amount, if we owe $30 trillion and we raise the rate 1/4 of 1%, 1% of 30 trillion is 300 billion. A quarter of that is $75 billion a year.
Compounding.
Compounding interest forever. Yeah. So you're talking about an extra $75 billion, and like you say, that $75 billion will have interest on top of that as well.
Yeah, and it's important to know.
Which is how we get Euler's number.
So it's important to know that $75 billion you're talking about, that there's nothing there. That's not money that we're buying something with. There's no product that comes with that. That's just a bill that we owe, and a lot of that we owe to China. So it's not. We are not in an acceptable position right now. The United States House of Representatives, constitutionally, is responsible for all things budget, and they haven't passed a budget since 1997. 1997 was the last time they passed an official full budget. It's been continuing resolutions since then, and it's gonna destroy our country. So,
I guess Bill Clinton wouldn't be able to be a Democrat in today's Democrat Party.
He would not.
Much less John F. Kennedy.
But he is. Very much so.
Oh, he's evolved?
No, he's very much a Democrat.
All right, and then we go on to talk about illegal immigration. How do you think that affects us, and why is that such a big passion of yours?
So illegal immigration is, in my opinion, the number one issue facing America right now. It goes into everything. You know, there was a discussion.
Not white supremacy?
Pardon?
They say that white supremacy is the number one issue in America
that is a Democrat talking point to draw your attention away from the actual problems in our country, and they have so many of them. The immigration problem, so I'm doing next week there's an event on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. It's a telephone town hall, and I'm having the former number 2 deputy national chief of Border Patrol on with us.
Right.
To talk about immigration specifically. And I'll give you one little talking point. If you're watching this and you have time Tuesday afternoon, dial in 702-848-4049. Go to my Facebook page. It's on there as well. At St. Peters, Nevada. But we're going to have him on, and he's going to tell us things like this, which he's told me, and there's so much more to this. There have been periods of time over the last few months, 5-day stretches, where a 200-mile stretch of border in Arizona has gone unguarded 100%. 0 Border Patrol agents for 200 miles for 5 days in a row. Now, they'll also tell you, we also know that there's been 2 million people in 2021 fiscal year.
Right.
2 million people that we've encountered. And
right.
How many did we not encounter?
Right. And
that number is much, much bigger.
And they used to say that the gotaways would be about double.
Yeah.
But I do believe, in my amateur opinion, that so many people got apprehended that maybe it's not double, but you're talking about at least another 1 million people. Well, at least.
I've heard as high as 4 to 1. Ron Colburn, the deputy chief.
You've heard more gotaways than actually
when you have a 200-mile stretch. So 200 miles, I didn't look it up directly, but here to Tonopah.
Right.
Or better. That's a 3-hour, 4-hour drive.
Right.
Right. When you've got that much landmass from the Mexico border, which is unguarded completely.
There's got to be more than 10% of the border.
It's an open door. It's an absolute open door to our country. We don't know what's coming. And I don't want to spill all the beans, but a large portion of the folks coming in from the southern border, they're not from Mexico or Central America.
Right.
They're coming in from other countries. They're from Africa. They're from Middle East. They're from wherever.
I follow a news organization in India because I found that sometimes getting your news from New Zealand or India, you can get a more honest look at America.
Yeah.
And also what's going on
Certainly
in Russia and Ukraine and stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have a thing. There's actually a problem in countries around the world that we don't know about, where they're trying to get their people to stay in their country. Because everybody's hearing around the world that they could come to America, and they're showing the routes. They're flying to Africa, to the Yucatan Peninsula, and then going up through Mexico. And they're also doing the visa way. I mean, we're letting people in on visas that, it's not maybe as bad as the southern border, but they're pouring in that way as well. And people are overstaying their visas. Yep. People are pouring over the border. And to be honest, I'm not worried about the orange tree farmers who are coming up for 6 months to work hard in California. Of course, that's the,
and they have a work visa.
Right.
And they're okay to be here.
You're talking about militia men.
You're talking about unknowns.
18 to 60 from all over the world.
Yes.
And again, if you're nefarious, this is your shot.
Yeah, and there's something very important to highlight with that, what you just said. So I spent, as we talked about, a lot of time in the Middle East with the military. I will tell you, and I will tell everybody watching, and I will never go away from this thought. The ideology that is in the Middle East against Western countries, the caliphate that we hear about, it's real. It is not a joke.
It's not like white nationalism here?
No, it's something like that on a much bigger scale, coming from the Islamic world against Western and Christian societies. So the caliphate, Islamic fundamentalists, radical, whatever you want to call them, but the caliphate, the desire to wipe out Christianity and the Western way, it is not a joke. It's not something to be messed with, and we're letting it in. No question, letting it in.
And there's
from all the borders. In the
now, not all Muslims are fundamental
not at all.
radicals.
Not at all. That's not what I'm saying.
But at the same time, you're saying there's millions
that ideology is real.
And they would do anything.
They will do anything.
I mean, if they could take out 5 Christians and sacrifice themselves, that would be an honor.
They flew planes into our World Trade Center. That's what we're talking about. Those are the type of people that are being allowed through our southern border. It's not something to joke about. It's something that we have to tackle. So you asked me when we started this, why is my passion immigration? I was a canine handler searching for bombs on borders that we guarded. I trained dogs and dog teams to go down to the southern border for narcotic interdiction.
Yeah, and let's not forget about the fentanyl. And you've got kids who are literally good kids who are like, don't even feel like drinking beer because they don't like the taste. They pop a pill.
That's right.
Thinking, I'll catch a little buzz, whatever. And they're dropping dead.
Yeah, and this administration's answer to that, as Joe Biden said in the State of the Union address, was to put scanners on the border to detect and eliminate fentanyl coming in. That's his answer to this. At a time when more people are dying from fentanyl than ever in history, illegal fentanyl, his answer is electronic scanners.
So we're going to leave that 200-mile thing of the border open, but we're going to have an infrared scanner, so that way if they have fentanyl, we'll...
If you're watching this podcast, if you call it a podcast,
whatever you want,
if you're watching this program,
if you're in my
dial in Tuesday night 702-848-4049. The former National Deputy Chief of Border Patrol will have much more of this for us. It's going to be a great teletown hall. I'm looking forward to it, and it's a serious issue.
And we've had a lot of guests on, and a lot of conservative guests talk about illegal immigration and abortion. And it tends to be on the bottom of their list, which I'm not saying that, health care, Second Amendment, education, all these things are but I've noticed that your list is a little bit different, where illegal immigration
number one
and abortion are both in the top three.
Well, so there's a couple of things. The top three is a little bit more encompassing, but the number one is immigration. Number two is the debt and the spending. And then number three is government overreach. Okay. A government overreach, a little more encompassing, and the government overreach includes spending money on abortion and killing babies.
Right.
That's happening. Our opponent, Steve Horsford, is taking money from places like Planned Parenthood. He is for that activity. It is absolutely something that I will not allow.
And here on the Johnny Brew Show, we define conservatism as small government at home,
all day,
America first abroad,
absolutely,
and a love for our founding documents.
Perfect.
And I'm guessing that's what you
100%.
Whether you're talking about bureaucracy, red tape, burdensome laws, too many laws,
correct,
too much government in our life, just period.
All day. That was part of my, the launch video that you showed when I started. Small government, getting the government out of your lives to the best extent possible. And one thing I will say about the America First agenda, I am absolutely an America First guy, and I will challenge any politician at any level. If they don't take an America First stance, they shouldn't be in office, because they take an oath to a constitution.
Okay, well, with that in mind then, concerning everything that's going on in Ukraine and the world's attention is over there, I mean, whether you believe that should trump everything in our lives, that's another question. But what would be the America First policy that you would most support today with what's going on? I mean, just yesterday, they attacked a nuclear facility. Thank goodness nothing happened to the stuff, but they're going to take over that energy source, which is about half of the Ukrainian, or a quarter of the Ukrainians' population's energy source. They're coming in up through Crimea area. They're coming to try to surround Kyiv. What is your America First solution?
Well, first thing we got to do is we have to stop funding Russia. And that's been a long time going. When President Biden came into office on January 20th, when he shut down the Keystone Pipeline, that immediately gave Putin billions of dollars in revenue to fund to sell his oil to Europe. He has a lock on the energy sources of
I think he
Europe.
Supplies over 50% of Germany's, almost 50% of France's.
I've heard 60% or better.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a problem. So what do we got to do in America? We need to get our energy independence back immediately. Stop importing Russian oil. This nonsense that Psaki is talking about, that it'll hurt people at the pumps if we stop getting Russian oil.
Right.
Well, paying a few extra cents at the pumps to save hundreds of lives, thousands of lives in Ukraine, to me is a worthy cause.
Right, but I mean...
But it also gives us our energy independence back.
Right, and when you talk about stuff, first of all, if you talk about supply and demand, simple supply and demand. If we're producing oil in Alaska, producing oil in the Rocky Mountains, in the Appalachian Mountains, all over, whether you're talking about Texas all the way up to Minnesota, North Dakota, right, or even Montana, and then you shut all these things down, whether it's because it's on federal land, or it's because it's a fracking thing, or because they're using a pipe instead of a truck. Right. I mean, we're just reducing the amount of supply of energy for the whole world. Whether you consider it just for us or you consider the whole.
Sure.
I mean, when you take that all out, you make everybody else's oil worth more.
Correct.
And who does oil? Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, you're absolutely on it, and it's more than that. And this again in the State of the Union, when Biden says we've released some of our strategic reserves,
the day before World War III.
Let's exactly. Thank you.
Holy cow!
Let's figure this. Let's put that in perspective. All of the things that you just said, we shut down our production. We're going to take it from our strategic supply.
Right.
At the time when oil is at $120 a barrel.
Right.
We got to backfill our strategic supply. So
In
we're going to
case
release
of that
it.
war.
We're going to release it. We got to backfill it. Where are we getting it? We're going to backfill it from Russia.
Right.
And give them more money to fund their
Instead
Ukraine.
of just opening up a spigot in
Thank you.
American land.
Thank you.
And I don't understand how you can, first of all, take oil out of our emergency reserves when those emergency reserves were created because we saw what happened during World War II, where if you don't have gas and oil, you can't move the tanks, move the helicopters, move the F-14s, whatever you're talking about.
Right.
And we always needed this. Just like with the pandemic, we overreacted. We locked everybody down over, it's definitely worse than the flu, but a respiratory virus that, really didn't, change the dynamic of the human populations the way it did, say, in 1917, 1918, right?
Spanish flu.
And I always said, what if we really had a pandemic emergency?
Right.
Would you have more tyrannical things? There was code DEFCON 1 for COVID when it wasn't the biggest emergency ever. Then you have the same thing happening with our oil supply. We shut off all the spigots, we turned everything off, and our gas went up. And now what's happening is the chickens are coming home to roost. Thankfully, we don't have a bad pandemic on top of the minor pandemic we had, but we are having a major energy crisis on top of the fabricated energy crisis. And the problem isn't paying a couple extra cents at the gallon because we're going to war with Russia.
Right.
The problem is we were paying $1 more per gallon,
Yeah.
and now we're going to war and you want us to pay another $1 or $2 a gallon.
Yeah.
Eventually the levee's going to break.
It is going to break, and it's we're not going to war, and I would never advocate. I am not advocating at this point going to war with Russia. But the reality is, just, you're right. We have to take care of. It goes back to the America First agenda, and I said this when Biden took office and he shut down the Keystone, and it didn't just. It's not just the Keystone. He's stopped. You talk about
Federal,
the spigot. He stopped federal exploration. He stopped all of the
land
New
leases.
Mexico land leases. He just recently put more limits on that. So it's just a poor energy policy all the way around,
And these decisions he made.
and military policies. You mentioned Milley and
Right.
Austin. It's tragic what we're going through right now.
All right, so a couple of questions regarding this is, first of all, would you, the president of Ukraine is now calling for America and the European Union to call for a total, what is it called when there's no plane? No-fly zone over Ukraine. First of all, would you consider that a declaration of war against Russia, as Putin said he would? And, I don't want to lead you into an answer. So what do you think about that dynamic?
Yeah, so a no-fly zone is how we got into the Iraqi war in 2003. If you recall, we had a no-fly zone, which is why I was in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. We had that from 1990 through 2003 before we took Iraq over. And that's something that has to be kept in perspective. If we're talking about a no-fly zone, how long does that last? What are we doing? Are we really willing to have American fighter pilots in the air above Ukraine in combat with Russia?
Russian
and
jets.
that's what it looks like.
Right.
That's what it would be. So would I agree that would be a war against Russia? Yes, I do.
Right.
And it's the equivalent. I'm an Air Force guy, so taking the high ground is one of our tenets, right?
Right.
When you do that, you are engaging in war, and the enemy in this case would be Russia. So it would be it's equivalent in my mind to putting boots on the ground.
And I would agree only because, if it's like the red line in Syria that Obama made.
Right.
If you're not willing to enforce those red lines, like if
Right.
we were to declare, a no-fly zone and we didn't shoot down a Russian jet, then every no-fly zone that we ever create in the future is going to be a joke.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot that can be done from military advisement of the Ukraine forces. There's things that they can do, that intelligence that we can provide, those type of things behind the scenes that doesn't have us putting Americans in harm's way in Ukraine.
Well,
it's time for countries around the world to stand up for themselves. America is not in a place to do it at this point.
Assuming that World War III nuclear annihilation is the worst case scenario, what is the best case scenario?
I think the best case scenario in this, and I said this a few weeks ago, there's two possible outcomes in my mind from Russians' perspective. Vladimir Putin is not one to just say, give up, you know what, I made a mistake. That's
right.
Not, he's got two options to save face, really. And one is just taking over Ukraine completely, or falling back to those two separatist-held regions on the eastern side that he initially said those were his focus.
Right, and that was his focus. Mission. Right.
He wants to annex those like he did Crimea because they're Russian nationalists, etc. So I think one of those two scenarios is probably best case scenario for him.
I'm no foreign policy expert,
yeah.
so please correct me if I'm way out of line. But I believe that Biden should have been tough before the invasion.
Yeah.
And you should be soft after the invasion, because if you paint Putin into a corner, he's just going to press all the nuclear buttons and say, all right, let's go out in a hail of gunfire.
Right.
I think Biden was soft leading up to the invasion, which we all have seen the clips of him, minor incursion and this, that, the other thing. Yeah. And now that he's already invaded, I feel like Biden's turning up the rhetoric and talking about we're going to make them pay, we're going to make them pay, we're going to make them pay, when right now I think we should be saying, what can we do to get you to take these troops out? Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not saying we should be soft on Putin, and I'm not saying that Putin isn't a killer that deserves whatever's coming to him. Mm-hmm. But at this point, we need to save lives. I mean, it's about the civilians.
Yeah, Joe Biden has, since he took office, been soft. And that is why we are in the predicaments we are in right now. There's no credibility to our military around the world. When the world watched what happened in Afghanistan, they knew immediately. Russia knew it, China knows it, Iran knows it, North Korea knows it. You notice in North Korea now, North Korea is firing ballistic missiles.
They just shot one into the Sea of Japan.
Yeah, so they did that for the first time a few months back, and it was the first time they did it since 2017. And who was in office in 2017?
Right, so from 2017 to 2020, we don't have nothing. 2021, we have two, and 2022, now we have another one.
Exactly. So all of that is predicated on the weakness shown by the Biden administration and what the world saw in Afghanistan. And it's shameful, and I got to point this out from a veteran perspective. Biden mentioned supporting veterans in the State of the Union address. He never once mentioned what happened in Afghanistan, and he should be ashamed of himself.
Yeah, not to even mention it.
Shameful.
And then I know Boebert and you're looking to join these girls. Yeah. Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they stood up and called him out on it, and they're getting hammered for it.
Sure.
It's okay to tear up the speech, but it's not okay to say boo when he talks about leaving 13 people behind.
Exactly.
The hypocrisy is my biggest problem.
Oh, it's bad. It's bad.
I'm going to give you 10 seconds just so you can tell us how you feel about the following issues, because we're running out of time. Okay. First of all, how do you feel about the Second Amendment, and if you could tie it to the Ukrainians standing up for themselves?
Absolutely. I'm a Second Amendment junkie. I'm a constitutional carry conservative. I think the Ukrainians would be in a much better place if they were of the ability to have and be trained with firearms as civilians.
Now, when you're talking about health care, it doesn't matter if you work for one of the big casinos on the Strip, you're a teacher, you're on Obamacare. It's always a disaster, from referrals to bills to exorbitant bills.
Yeah.
What can you do in Congress for health care?
We can repeal Obamacare. We can put competition back in the marketplace. Let the free market work as the free market does, and then
interstate.
I'm sorry?
Interstate insurance? I mean, 'cause right now it's so hard to get insurance, and if you move, you need another insurance company. So each insurance is specific to each state.
So the opportunity for business to solve these problems should be allowed in business, not the government. The government has never come in and solved these problems. They've only made it worse. I can tell you, and it takes more than 10 seconds, but I can tell you, when I was running the marketplace in Alaska for my insurance company, we didn't do health insurance, so we would refer that to other health carriers. Before Obamacare went into place, we had 14 carriers that we could refer business to. when there's 14 carriers, there's competition, prices are low. Within a year, that 14 went down to 2.
And
prices went up
Right.
50%, and you know where they've gone since then. So the government has to get out of healthcare. We have to make healthcare between the patient and the doctor, and that's something we need to aim for.
You've talked about your support of vets through the entire episode. What about jobs? I mean, the Democrats, Biden at his State of the Union, are talking about what a great job they're doing with jobs. Unemployment is down.
Yeah.
He's created more jobs in the past year than any or he said that.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, I think that was fact check false, but
Yeah.
they're talking about how much jobs they produced and how well they're doing with the economy. Would you agree with their assessment?
I would not agree with their assessment whatsoever. When you've locked down the country for 2 years and you've killed millions and millions of jobs, you do not get to claim those jobs when you start opening the economy and people start going back to work on the jobs that you killed for them.
So you wouldn't call them jobs created?
No, I wouldn't call them jobs created at all. And the fact of the matter is, the government is not in a place to create jobs. Industry is in the place to create jobs. Right. And the less bureaucracy we have, the more jobs that will be created by the people who actually create jobs.
What about election security? Do you believe Joe Biden is the duly elected president of the United States?
I believe the 2020 election was not accurate. It should not have been certified. I believe the machines. What happened at?
Are you talking about Nevada, or are you talking about any other states in particular?
I'm talking about Arizona. I'm talking about Georgia. I'm talking about Pennsylvania. I'm talking about Wisconsin, possibly and Michigan. Those key states that people are looking at. When the machines that are in place have been proven to be vulnerable, and it can be proven that they've been used to steal elections in the past. Philippines, other places as well. We've hacked into Venezuela. Thank you. When those type of things are happening, and then they shut down vote counting in the middle of the night, and the president's winning, Trump is winning, and then we wake up in the morning and he's losing. But vote counting had stopped.
Right.
We have problems.
So what would you like to see done about elections?
I think I've actually on my website. There's a letter that I sent to Secretary Sagaski twice. She has not responded. I believe that the machines need to go. Any machine that is headquartered or owned by a company headquartered in a foreign company or a country should not be in our election process.
That doesn't seem too.
They're headquartered in Toronto, and they will say no. Our headquarters, our sub headquarters is in Colorado. That doesn't work.
Right.
That's a non-starter.
Right.
So those machines need to go. I think paper ballots, secure paper ballots.
You know what I'd like? I'd like an election day.
One day?
One day.
Absolutely.
You show up. You say, "Hey, this is who I am. Yeah. Here's my driver's license." You got to pay.
Yeah.
Do the things.
I agree.
No hanging chads.
I agree with you.
No chads.
The reference that I use on that is us gentlemen. We have 364 days to figure out Valentine's Day, and if we don't, it's self-correcting.
Right? They don't give us a month.
Exactly.
All right, and law and order. Again,
yes,
you've enlightened me as to your why you're so passionate about law and order. What do you want to see done in general?
We need to support our law enforcement across the country. These weak city governments, all of them that have been burning these things that we see on TV, where it's a mostly peaceful protest. Those they're in Democrat-led cities, and it's weak policies on law and order, and letting people out of prison because of COVID. They're violent criminals, and we're going to let them out of prison because COVID concerns.
Again, COVID wasn't The Walking Dead.
No, it was not at all, not even close. So I think we need to support law enforcement across the board. We need to get back to a law and order society, and again, get federal government out of the way.
All right, I haven't been able to get mad at you, but I'm going to get mad at you because education is now like number 9 or 10 on the list, and at the Johnny Brew Show, education's number 1. Mm-hmm. But all kidding aside, what is it about education that you'd like to see different? What bothers you now, and what can we do?
I'd like to see Nevada better than 49th on the list.
I would too.
I think we need to focus where the focus needs to be, and that's on the kids and their learning. It doesn't need to be focused on spending more money and more money and more money. Every year, the answer seems to be, well, they need more funding. They need more funding. They need more funding.
And teachers need more training and more work.
And exactly. So, and right now, I saw a stat yesterday, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 vacancies across the Clark County School District for teachers.
That's for the transfer season.
Unbelievable.
Plus, we're already, a whole bunch short. Plus, I'm finding out now that on Mondays and Fridays, they're tending to have 1,500 teachers call out sick.
Yeah.
Or take a personal day so they could change their weekends to 3-day
Unbelievable.
weekends.
So from a federal level, I will tell you, I don't think it's the federal government's job to figure this out. On the local level, I would say...
There's my Constitution. Where does education show up in the Constitution?
It's not. That's my point.
Oh.
It's not. That's my point.
Oh.
And my point would be...
How about healthcare?
My thought on education would be separating or splitting up the Clark County School District.
And
Smaller
that's
districts.
been something that a lot of people have proposed.
Healthcare is not in the Constitution either.
Then why are we keep talking about it? I mean,
Because-
you're running for federal government. Why are we even talking about education and healthcare?
Because we are spending way too much money in the federal government on these things, and our debt, it goes into that third pillar that I mentioned, and that's the federal overreach.
Who's supposed to take care of healthcare and education?
Industry.
Oh. Or the states, at
or the
least,
states
or
and
local
local governments.
Oh.
Exactly, yes.
All right. And then also you talk about Israel. And I'm guessing this also relates to your foreign policy. We talked about Ukraine, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Syria. And what is it about Israel that you're so passionate about?
Israel is our only ally in the Middle East.
And you have firsthand experience of
well,
this.
I've never been to Israel,
but the climate in the Middle East.
Absolutely. So they are our ally, and we need to protect. They deserve to have their country. On my website, there is a Israel position paper. Folks are welcome to go see that.
And was this written during the time that they were lobbing those rockets into Israel?
They've been lobbing rockets into Israel since the 80s. So
right, and
before.
Israel tends to get in trouble for defending itself.
They do.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Like their missile dome or whatever
The
it's
Iron
called.
Dome.
The Iron Dome, right.
Yeah.
They're shooting out missiles and stuff, and then they're getting blamed for being aggressive.
Yeah, well, when you're being attacked, you have to be aggressive back to protect yourselves. If you're going to be bullied, you have to bully back.
All right, and where can we find out more about you? You have a website?
I do. Sam Peters, the number 4congress.com, sampeters4congress.com. On social media, at Sam Peters Nevada. You can check me out there. My phone number, if you want to give me a call, 702-337-3067. I'm happy to take phone calls there. And we've got, like I said, that Teletown Hall event is on Tuesday. I'll give the number one more time, 702-848-4049. On Wednesday, I'm doing events all of the time, a couple of times a month. On Wednesday, I'm doing one at the Town Center Lounge 2, which is at 2992 West Cheyenne. And we'll be out there from 4 to 6 on Wednesday next week.
And then can you click on the endorsements tab on the top right? I was pretty impressed. I saw endorsements, and you want to know the truth. When I was doing my research, my computer had a hiccup. So I clicked the endorsements, and I saw this blank page. I'm like, he should take off the endorsements tab if he doesn't have any. But then after a second, it did kick in, and I was like, whoa, this guy's got a lot of endorsements.
Yeah.
I mean, I see, First of all, how did Sid Miller do in that Texas primary, I see?
You know what? Unfortunately, I haven't taken a look at the Texas primary. We've been really, really in depth on this race. But I'm sure he did well.
So I see Ted Nugent, Wayne Allen Root, who we spoke a little bit about. Katie Williams, you had brought up. Stavros Anthony was another guest on the Johnny Bruce Show. Rob Lauer. We just covered one of his articles regarding the CCSD. Varlin Higbee was on the Johnny Bruce Show along with Michael B. Jack.
Oh, good.
Yeah, right before I gave him a chance to come talk.
Yeah. Varlin's a great guy, cattle rancher up in Lincoln County.
Leo Blundo.
And county commissioner.
You got a lot of people.
Congressman Andy Biggs at the top there.
Andy Biggs.
Congressman Paul Gosar. Former Governor Robert List is on there as well. So we're proud of our list of folks that are supporting us, and that list is growing. There's actually 3 or 4 that we have not released yet. So
really? You got some big announcements? Come on, give the Johnny Bruce Show an exclusive.
An exclusive?
Throw us a phone, man.
You would know him as a media celebrity on 720 here in Las Vegas. Mr. Steve Sanchez has endorsed us.
Mr. Steve Sanchez, welcome. I actually got a chance to introduce myself to Steve last week for the first time.
He's on 6 to 8 p.m. all week, and I was on his show last Thursday.
Very good. And how was that?
It was great.
It was great. At the K-Dawn Studios on Rainbow?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Nice.
So there's some more coming.
All right.
I'll let you know on those.
What I want to give you an opportunity to do is for 30, 60, even 90 seconds, whatever you want, take the stage, talk to the voters, and tell them why they should vote for you in the primary in June, as well as the general election in November for Congress, Nevada District 4.
I thank you for that. So, again, my name is Sam Peters. I'm running for Congress in Nevada's 4th Congressional District. I'm running against Steve Horsford, who is the Democrat incumbent. He is a socialist. He is for open borders, socialized medicine, all those things the federal government is spending money on. And to cap that all off, Breitbart did an article recently where he stood up and he's applauding the fact that his wife announced that she has been teaching critical race theory at Columbia University since 2011. That's a pin in the what his character looks like, and that is not representative in Nevada, in my opinion. I stepped up a few years ago to run for this seat. I'm still at this seat. This is my second run because it's worth it. Our American values, our conservative values, our Nevada values are not being represented. The experience I have in foreign affairs, my experience in education and finance, in law and order, I believe that I'm the best person in the primary to take this position, to take this seat and compete against Steve Horsford and take him down. People will talk about money being the key to winning elections. Nobody in this race has raised as much money as I have to date. And we are well poised. The support we received in 2020, the overarching majority of that support is still there, and we're looking forward to taking that to the polls on June 14th. I'd love to have your support. I'd love to have your vote. Again, my name is Sam Peters, running for Congress in District 4, sampeters4congress.com.
Beautiful and very well done.
Well, thank you.
Do you think this that now you have some name recognition just simply from running last time, that could be an advantage?
Absolutely, no question about it. No question about it.
Very good. Do you have some of those things that I have ready? All right, I had some graphics, but I'm going to tell you guys about it on the following episodes. But there is a COVID summit coming on March 26th at the Ahern Hotel, hosted by Dr. Fred Simon, emceed by Wayne Allen Root. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be the exclusive media partner for them, and I'm going to be having interviews from the Bat Lady, as well as I was gonna read it off the graphic. I forgot who it was, but there's some incredible guests. Also, there's going to be a huge Vegas CCW concealed carry event on April 10th with, I think, at least a half dozen. Oh, there we go. With at least a half dozen candidates, conservative candidates, who are going to be speaking at that event as well. Just Google Vegas CCW or visit vegasccw.com. And then finally, we have an Asian Pacific Community Awareness event on March 25th. You could contact Vince at 702-695-2684 for the Asian Pacific Community Awareness, where they're going to be discussing what the Asian community wants from their conservative candidates leading into the primaries as well. So find all that information. We'll be telling you about that on the upcoming episodes as the month of March is here, and June and November are coming closer and closer. So again, please subscribe. Hit us up on Rumble, where we back everything up. YouTube, hit the bell. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're on it. Just look it up, subscribe, tell a friend, and keep following us. I want to thank Sam Peters for joining us. It was another great episode. You've got a lot of interesting stuff, and we wish you the best of luck in the upcoming primary and the election.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Until then, my name is John Brookhagen. Check out Carrie Cox tomorrow on the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome to Red Wave 22.